Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Dawson. Welcome to Can You Relate, Cleveland's relationship show. If you've been tuning in the last couple months, you know that this show is all about you and all about all kinds of relationships that you might have. One of my favorite segments in the show is called the Romance Review, and I want to tell you a little bit of a change that we're doing starting today. Every once in a while I'm going to throw in a romance tip. This is something you do to show your mate that he or she matters. So we'll get to that later in the show. But first, we're going to talk with someone who's all about relationships, someone who's created a comic strip who I want you to meet. Come with me. Our next guest has tackled topics such as teen pregnancy, breast cancer, post-traumatic stress syndrome. This man knows about relationships. His name is Tom Baddock, and he is the creator, illustrator, and writer of Funky Winkerbean. I am so honored to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
In fact, why don't you sit here and I'll sit there, because you know all about relationships, the things that you have written about. Tell me a little bit about the beginning of the evolution. I know when you first started this like 38 years ago,
right,
it was funky in high school.
Yeah, and you know, the strip was about high school students, which naturally kind of walks you into relationships because
Absolutely.
You're dealing with all that. But it's relationships on a very simple, kind of naive level.
More surface stuff?
More surface stuff.
Okay.
And in order to sort of keep up with the high school thing, I'd go back to my old high school, and I was sitting there sketching, and one day in my sketchbook, a girl who's pregnant turns up, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, this is part of what goes on too, and maybe I should deal with this and put something like this in. It walked me into a situation where Lisa became pregnant.
This is Lisa?
This is Lisa.
Okay.
And Les was her friend. He wasn't the father, but he was her friend, but he became her birthing partner. And going through this whole situation caused these two characters to grow up. And I suddenly realized that it was going to be very hard to go back to the picture of Les on the rope during the homecoming dance that you showed earlier.
You were past the point.
You had to move forward, and so we did a little time jump and took them into adult life.
Okay. So how did your readers react to this? I mean, they're used to looking at Les on the rope, right? And then all of a sudden Les is coaching somebody to have a baby.
Well, readers, they really take comic characters to heart, so it was took a while for them to kind of get used to what was going on. But I think they like where I took it, and because it allowed me to grow up, I was happier with it, and that comes through in this strip.
And it comes from you, you know, and if that's the place you're at, I imagine that made sense.
Right.
So now let's talk about Lisa, because she was diagnosed with breast cancer, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Well,
you know, again, the adult relationships that I was dealing with at that point were much more nuanced, much more complicated. And then I began to think, what happens when fate intervenes and takes a hand, and how does that test the relationship, and what happens? And that's when Lisa was diagnosed.
Okay, and there's a wonderful book called Lisa's Story, The Other Shoe, which I want to hold up and show. So that came out, that was an outgrowth of that whole story.
Right, exactly.
Now, you're dealing with another relationship situation with a character named Wally.
Yeah, Wally is Funky's cousin, and he was in Iraq, came back, and he's suffering from post-traumatic stress. And I was writing this, and the work started getting a bit darker and a bit darker, and I needed to bring some light into it somewhere. And then I was listening to the radio and heard about an organization, Puppies Behind Bars, where prisoners train dogs to work as service dogs for veterans. And I contacted them. They put me in touch with a veteran. And a lot of the situations that we talk about, the issues they deal with and that sort of thing, he was suggesting ideas and concepts and things, and so it was a great resource. Wow. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. He will get a dog. He's in the process of doing this right now, and he will get a dog, and this will be part of his life going forward.
So you're taking real life situations and incorporating them into the comic strip and touching thousands, millions of lives, because you're syndicated all over the place.
Well, it's having a bad imagination, so I can't make up too much stuff. So it's like,
thank you so much for being here. It's a real honor to have you on the set.
I appreciate it, Kathy. Thank you.
Now, if you would like to learn more about, in fact, I went to your website last night. If you'd like to learn more about Funky Winkerbean and the evolution of it, you can go to the website funkywinkerbean.com. Stay tuned. There's more of Can You Relate coming up.
Up next, it's not an easy topic, but it's an important one. Sexual abuse and how it affects your personal relationships. We'll offer help. And later in the show, can you relate to your car? We'll explore why our cars become more than a way to get from here to there.
Craig and Mark Lindell and Grange Insurance understand that 1 minute, you're out there living life to the fullest. The next thing you know, you've got sweeping changes to make and your family's future to think about. Talk to Lindell Insurance about how to save by putting all of your insurance with Grange, protecting your possessions and the ones you love. When things zig instead of zag, contact Lindell Insurance or visit their website.
We have someone here who's going to help us with this topic, Dr. Lolita Lally McDavid from University Hospitals. I hope I get this right. Your title is Medical Director of Child Advocacy and Protection for Rainbow Babies and Children. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, when women are raped and they go to an emergency room, I'm imagining that's the next step possibly that happens?
Yes, usually that's what happens.
And what can they expect?
Well, if you come to university hospitals, we have what's called a sex assault nurse examiner. So these are RNs, registered nurses, who are specifically trained in getting the forensic evidence, doing it in a compassionate way, and also going and testifying in court if need be.
I see. So my guess is you have to have some real trust in the relationship. I mean, these people are coming off the street. You've never met them before. Not you, but the person who's examining them. So they've been trained to build some kind of trust, I'm guessing.
Well, usually people are brought in either by the police or by family members, or sometimes they just find their way there themselves.
Okay.
So we start with trying to make them feel at least as comfortable as you can in this situation. The other thing that we do is we call other outside entities like Rape Crisis that can come in and be with this person, because this is what they're trained to do, and to make sure that they get into the services that they need after they leave the emergency room.
You know, the first thing I think of, because I'm a relationship coach, is I think how this kind of thing can impact a very important relationship. Do you have people who help other people who are related to the person who's been raped, and how they can support that person at all?
Well, you know, it's an emergency room and we're very busy.
Right.
So the nurse examiner is specifically with that person, and then there's what's called a chaperone. I mean, when we do any kind of sexual exams, there's somebody else in the room. That can either be someone that the person has brought with them, or it can be somebody from the Rape Crisis Center,
okay,
or it can be another hospital employee.
Okay, so my guess is there are a lot of resources there for the person who's been raped, for any kind of relative who might come in with that person.
Yes.
Now, there's the physical effect. I mean, I can't even wrap my mind around it. There's the physical effect, but then there's the emotional effect. Is there any difference between the two in how you approach people?
Well, remember, an emergency department is just that. It's for emergencies. So for the long-term effects afterwards, because sometimes the trauma doesn't really hit you until 2 to 3 days or even weeks afterwards.
Like a delayed reaction?
Right. So that's why we try to make sure that people are tied into other resources in the community that they can use when they wake up in the middle of the night and they can't sleep.
What is the most, in your experience, what is the most common reaction that, I mean, is it sleeplessness? I mean, can you tell people this is what you can expect, or is everybody completely different?
I think everyone is different because every situation is different. You know, most rape is not stranger rape. Okay, it is acquaintances.
Oh, really?
Yes.
See, I didn't know that.
Yes. I was actually on the board of trustees of one of our state universities, and we had gone almost 10 years without having a stranger rape. Our rape cases were going up, but they weren't stranger, they were acquaintance rape.
Oh my gosh.
So people get together, they have too much to drink, and then someone gets sexually assaulted.
So, okay, it's the physical aspect, but then you got to deal with how you're going to handle the relationship after that. You know, I mean, let's talk severing the relationship.
Yeah, hopefully that relationship is not a relationship anymore.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is all wonderful information. Thank you for the service you give to the community. We really appreciate you being here. And if you want to know more information about this, you can go to the website rainbowbabies.org.
In an earlier show, Kathy shared the first half of her list of the worst ways to communicate. Are you ready for the rest? We've got 'em. And remember, answer honestly. When you're upset or bothered by someone, do you yell or scream at the person? Call the person a name? Swear at the person? Be a go-oner by going on and on about something? Use a condescending tone? Does one of these have your number? Next, Kathy shares how to improve your score.
If you use any of those 5 worst ways to communicate, by the way, there are 10 altogether, you're doing what's called blocking the pipeline. I want you to imagine that when you interact with someone else, you have a pipeline between you. It's invisible, but it's there. And over time, we unwittingly clog it. You know why? Because as we grow, from the smallest age, we build up habits, and we don't realize they're not serving the relationship. So the key is to keep your antenna up and keep your pipeline clean. So if you want to take, you've already taken this survey, or you know anybody else that wants to take it, you can do so by going on CanYouRelateTV.com. Stay tuned, because we have another segment coming up.
Just ahead, do you name your car? Well, you're not alone. We'll share why we get emotionally attached to our autos. And later, you're gathering your holiday gifts, but what if a Grinch steals Christmas? We'll help you protect yourself.
For those who struggle with drug and alcohol addiction, finding the courage to change is the first step to lasting recovery. Discover life in recovery. Discover Glen Bay.
Glen Bay, nationally recognized drug and alcohol treatment for adults. Discover more at glenbay.com.
Join in as Al's Deli celebrates its 5th anniversary. Nestled in downtown Cleveland's 55 Erie View Plaza building, Al's Deli serves breakfast, lunches, delicious Middle Eastern dishes, and has catering too. Al's Deli, a hidden treasure for your tummy. Log on for money-saving coupons today.